Okay, go live. I think now you're going live. All right, I think you're live now.
Still looks like it's waiting.
I think now we're live. Yes, there you go. All right, okay. So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining this podcast or this webinar, Roomvu Success Series. My guest today is Michael. We've been fortunate to have him on various meetings, and this is your chance today to learn from his top skills. He's a super seasoned realtor who's built many teams, and I'm so excited to have him. So, Michael, I would love to learn a little bit about you, and I would love to for our audience to get to know you a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on, Sam. This is really exciting. I've been in the real estate industry for just a little over 10 years now, but I would say my journey through the real estate industry has been a little bit more atypical. And I think oftentimes when we get into the real estate industry, we have this image of what real estate's going to be like. And I had that exact same image, and that's not exactly how it panned out per se. So I like to say as I started my real estate career, it was basically a landmine of failures as I started to progress in real estate. We all know the statistic of those who get out of the real estate industry, and I contributed to that statistic in getting out after my first year of real estate. Just completely unaware of how to go about selling real estate and getting clients for that matter. And then over time, I got back into the industry and started to build a small team. I worked directly with my wife, and we started to build a small team. We actually failed at that quite miserably as well. And then after we kind of figured that out,
I love how you're covering the failures first. That's awesome.
there's a theme here, man. There's a theme here. And then over time, we started to kind of find out what works for us, and we doubled down on that. Built a independent brokerage in Calgary. And then from there, I also helped a prop tech company in Canada build out their real estate operations and their real estate training, and found out from that I absolutely love real estate training, absolutely love it. And so from there, we've now built out a training platform called Rev Real Estate School.
That's awesome. So let's go. Like there are multiple points here, and I would love to kind of cover them. So okay, so tell us how you failed in the first year. Like why was it? What was so difficult? What did work and what didn't work on the first year, and what did you learn from that?
Yeah, and I think that anybody in the real estate industry can probably attest to this. That you come out of this course and you think, okay, well now I'm licensed to sell real estate, so let's just go out there and do it. But the real challenge, of course, as we all know, is getting that client base. And so I had this image in my mind that I would finish the course, and then the phone would start ringing. And that just wasn't necessarily true. So I was a part-time agent off the start, which actually I'm an advocate for as well, because when you're getting started, of course, income is going to be limited. But what I found was, as I started to go through my first year, I started to kind of have these doubts and think to myself, am I cut out for sales? Am I a sales guy? And those doubts kind of started to snowball. And then towards the end of my first year, I was like, you know what, maybe not. And, but the funny thing is like this concept of sales and this concept of marketing is such a learnable skill. And so really what happened to me, I think it was mostly around self-doubt within my first year, which I think we probably all go through. But I just became more of a victim of that, and then fell out of the industry, and actually, in fact, sold a few homes. So like when I think back to my production, it was like decent for a first year agent, but just was not finding my rhythm because I didn't really have any sort of structure, any sort of system. And that I think is what was the major contributor to the initial failure. But even when I look back at it, I don't regret it by any means. And the failure, there's so much that comes from that. And there's going to be so many failures in real estate, right? And so it depends on how we look back on that. And was that actually time well spent? Absolutely, because I learned a lot over the course of that year.
That's awesome. That's great. That's great. So I think we're gonna cover a few topics today. But first and foremost, I would love to get your thoughts on what is success looking like for an agent, and what is that success how do you define it for like a agent that's in the first year, agent that's in the fifth year, an agent or an agent that's been been in the industry for years? So how do you define it?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you measure it later on?
It's a really, really good question. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that we make in the real estate industry is this concept of comparison. And so we tend to measure our success against a yardstick that potentially isn't actually realistic. And sometimes it's not even true. So digging into that a little bit deeper, we'll tend to measure our success against some other agent in the industry. And there's a lot of people in this industry that come from different backgrounds, and we're all on these separate journeys. And so the way that I tend to measure success is less so based on a dollar figure, based on a follower count, based even on how big your database is. Instead, it's just a comparison between who you were previously. So what did you do the year before and where are you at now? What did you do the month before and where are you at now? And I find as soon as we start to put ourselves in this position of comparing ourselves to our previous self, that's a real unlock. And that was a real unlock for me, is because I'm going to be on a different journey than the next agent out there. So my success has to be grounded in where was I and where am I now? And so as far as like from a financial standpoint, I think it's fantastic. We have to set goals. We have to be mindful about our business plans, but we have to be systematized about how we get there. And as soon as we start this comparison game in real estate, hey, I'm in my fifth year of real estate, so I should be producing at X. That's not necessarily the case. I know a real estate actually, in fact, amazing real estate agent. She went through her first 4 years, like literally her first 4 years, and sold one house. Wow. And now I think she's been in about 15, 16 years and well over 7 figures when it comes to her gross commission income. And that's just, wow. It just speaks to the fact that we're all going to be on these different journeys. And if we end up just comparing ourselves to where another agent is, that's where things can go south quite quickly.
That makes sense. So what are the 3 most important marketing aspects? So like I'm an agent, how do I market myself? And working with a lot of tech in the past, working on your own brokerage, I think you should have a pretty good idea of what does that look like. How do you market yourself? And what are the 3 most important aspects of it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess even before jumping into to 3 elements, I would say the first thing is just this nature of a bias for action. And I think so many times, again, this is another thing that we can probably all relate to, is this concept of like, this is a great marketing tactic, so we're just going to kind of perfect it until we never do anything with it. And the more in real estate that we can have this bias for action when we're thinking about marketing, the more we're going to produce over time. And so that's, I guess, more of a mindset when we think about marketing. But if narrowing it down to 3, I would say there's out of the 3 things, I would say, starting off with right off the bat, I would say that being a content creator is absolutely huge in this day and age. And it's undervalued. A lot of real estate agents want to go out there, and oftentimes what they're looking for are motivated seller leads, motivated buyer leads. And that is like, in baseball, like we're getting to third base. We have to think first about first base and getting there. And if we can start to picture ourselves as this content creator, then from there is where our pipeline will definitely grow. And oftentimes the other thing is like we get too distracted by so many different ways to create content. And really my suggestion, like there's so many different ways, right? We're doing a video right now. You can go live, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, you name it. But really, I think we really need to distill this down to 3. We really need to distill this down to 3 different platforms that we're going to create content for. And then we have to be extremely consistent with it, even when we don't want to. And so that would be the first one.
It always blows my mind when realtors come to us and they're like, well, you know what? I just have my Facebook business and I think it's a great thing. And I'm like, dude, like Facebook business is a pay to play thing. Like it's a great tool for showcasing your business. It's great to show that you're posting your reviews there and everything else. But really, if you want to be visible, you got to be across a lot of channels. That omni-channel presence, I think, is what a lot of realtors miss. And something else that I keep saying, and I think you mentioned it as well, is that consistency, right? Like no matter what you do, you still, even if you use like Roomvu to create content for you? I still advocate for one post per week that is you, your brand, your identity, who you are, and what defines you as that agent, right? So we've been doing a lot of the kind of advocacy for grab that phone, don't be scared, no one is judging you. Don't compare yourself against another realtor that's getting that pro guy to shoot the video. Even if you just post something, even if you're doing one thing at a time, you're staying visible and you're staying top of mind, right? And I think that's what a lot of us missed on the first couple of years of doing business as well. Just being afraid of the camera, right? Like, and thinking, okay, what do I do now? What do I say? And it doesn't really. I always say like it doesn't really matter, right? Like, if you just go to news channels right now, CNN, Fox News, they're all saying the same stuff. It's just different ways of portraying that news, right? Different ways of covering it. Yeah. And it's okay. It's okay to talk about interest rates. Everyone is talking about interest rates.
Yeah.
But just get out there and talk about it, right?
The thing, what I think you're touching on here, which I think is so important, is also that when we start creating this content, we actually become better real estate agents. And that's because we're forced to read these articles and we're forced to have a position. We're forced to take a stance. And then we're also forcing ourselves into this zone of discomfort and actually putting ourselves out there. And yes, your first few posts, yes, your first few videos, they will be rough. They will be totally rough. But the other piece to this is we grow so much as individuals as we start producing content in public. If we just like, I've spent months working on a blog post, and it's like, Mike, you should have sent that thing out after day 2. Because we have this law, like diminishing returns big time, right? And the same thing when we're editing our videos, there's just a level of diminishing returns where we just have to ship it. And this is coming back to this concept of a bias for action. The more that we can just be shipping things, the more eyeballs that are going to be honest. And then we become better agents and even better versions of ourselves because we force ourselves to communicate better by just producing more content.
Yeah. And I think that's the key. Just don't be afraid of the camera. Get out there, post, and the idea is stop thinking that you have to talk about listings. I actually think listings are great, but you shouldn't really post and talk too much about that listing, because the moment I post like 3 homes sold this week, my audience is asking, gosh, how much money is Sam making? They're not asking, like, they're not building a connection with me, right? Like, so they're thinking in their head, okay, well, what is this guy doing? And it might be a good thing, but you also have to build that personal connection. You have to be approachable. And the fact is, like, when you grab that camera, when you start talking to people feel that deep connection. They feel like they already know you, right?
Totally.
And they want to talk to you.
And you're like one of the most Googled terms for people when you're like Googling around something about real estate. One of the most Googled terms and one of the biggest things on YouTube is a day in the life. And I think that speaks a lot to what our audience is looking for. Like, we wear so many hats and we think that doing a CMA is boring. It is not boring. People want to know what we're doing. And so many times we're so inhibited and we stop ourselves from posting that content because we think nobody cares. When in fact, like, looking at the data, people really care about what's going on behind the scenes. And this is also, we're able to develop our personalities and show our true colors as well.
Yeah, and I think that's the key, right? I think there's a couple of points to cover here. One, don't be afraid of the camera. Don't be afraid to talk about what you're thinking, what you're doing, what's happening right now in your day. And 2 is consistency. And the third thing is maybe just ship it out. Like, ship it out as fast as you can, and don't be afraid to be judged. I always said, like, I have a lawyer friend, and the first time I wrote an article on Forbes, I was like, wow, this is so great. And it was like, you know, who reads an article 2 times? So it was like, who? It was like you and your mom. That's it. No one else will read this more than once, if you're lucky. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. And I think that's the key, right?
That is the key. And the concept of the spotlight effect, right? Where we think as soon as we post something that all eyes have turned to us and we think everybody cares. And it's actually so freeing to know that nobody really cares that much, right? We can just like let down our guard because people have so many other things on the go when it comes to these things.
That's right. So going back to content a little bit, so something interesting that we have seen is so there are a lot of videos on the platform, and realtors tend to pick the longest video ever to post on social media. So if you have like 30-second videos and like 2-minute videos, realtors tend to pick that 2-minute video. And like if you're running ads, realtors would love to get out of their cars and talk about like how beautiful it is out there and how luxurious their life is, without focusing on one thing. And that one thing is there's no time. No one cares that much, right? So like, how do you tell people to go away from that like 2-minute video down to a 30-second thing that's concise, that's saying the point, and it's enough details to keep you afloat, keep your content being viewed, but at the same time, keep the focus and be exciting. So how would you do that?
Yeah. So the way I would respond to that is one word, maybe it's 2 words, TikTok. And the reason I say that is if you want to become concise, go to TikTok, put it on 15 seconds, and then record a video and try and fit what you're saying into 15 seconds. And it is hard. It is hard, especially if you're verbose as a real estate agent. Even if you're not, it can be very, very challenging. And I love TikTok for that reason, that it rewards us for engagement. And it also is just trying to force us to be more concise and be quick. Funny thing about TikTok, I was talking to somebody and she's absolutely massive on TikTok. And what she says is she even edits out the breaths. So if I'm about to shoot a TikTok and I go, and I'm about to start speaking, she edits out that breath. And that's because it has to be so short. It has to be so concise. And the other thing that I love about this platform is that A, I think it's underserved right now in the real estate industry. B, if we're fearful about putting ourselves out there on Facebook and Instagram because all our friends and family are following us, put yourself out there on TikTok because there's a fraction of the people out there. And it's even like if I was going back in time, if there's anything that I would have done differently, it would have been doubling down even more on Instagram and Facebook. We have that opportunity now as this new platform is out there. And so if we want to be concise, use a platform that forces us to be concise.
That's awesome. So someone in the audience, I think Claudia, is asking if so this is more of our platform question. I'm just going to quickly cover that, and then we can move on to questions to the next part. So basically, so guys, we do one thing, and that is we go through the web, we scour the web for content, and we post it on your behalf. We do 80% of the work. But what we're talking about is that effective 20%. And in order to have that success, you have to do that 20%. So you have to be visible pretty much every day. And we do that through Instagram stories, TikTok reels, and so on. But that personal touch is what we're talking about today. And that personal touch, that personal branding, what defines who you are and what's your past and like what you've done and so on, that extreme amount of knowledge that they can put that in that one video or one post is what we're talking about. Like I always say, like I go for a lot of runs and I post that. Like I'm not scared to share that, right? So I keep sharing that. Like today I ran like 20K, 10K, whatever, and it's amazing how people are actually connecting with me. They're like, "Well, Sam, you motivated me to go for a run today. Sam, I'd love to come run with you." And this is the part, right? This is just sharing what your day looks like, right? So if you're going for a 7 a.m. run, everyone should know, and they should join you for that thing because you did something nice. You're actually spreading the nice things that you do so other people can see it and they can connect with you. And I think that's something a lot of us kind of forget. So going back to our next question here. So what are the 3 most common mistakes? So now we talked about those 3 most important things. Like what are the top 3 common mistakes that you see realtors do on social, on their marketing, and so on?
Yeah. So 3 things I would say. So first off, differentiation. Agents are so afraid of differentiation, finding a niche, finding a specialization. And I think that's a big mistake that that will become more and more challenging over time. So that would be the first one. The second one I would say is underspending when it comes to your SOI and your database. And as we all know in real estate, like 90% plus of your business is going to come from your database. Yet we spend very, very little time as well as money on this segment of our business. And we spend a lot of money and time trying to chase new leads without understanding that there is an absolute gold mine in front of us. Even if we have a database of like 20 people, like they all know 5 people that are going to buy and sell this year. Why are we under investing when it comes to time and money in that segment? So that would be another really, really important one. And then I would still just come back to this fact of consistency. And even when we're really excited, we've all been to conferences and courses and we say, okay, our business is going to change from now on out. I find usually by day like 7 or 8 is where it's going to drop off. And I think that's where the system comes into place, is we have to have a system that we're going to trust and we're going to follow. And then we're just going to do that basically, not completely, but basically blindly. We are going to continue to follow that system until we have enough data to indicate does this system work? And oftentimes we drop off way too early, because real estate, we all know, if I'm reaching out to you, Sam, right now, even if you've shown signals that you're looking to buy or sell, there's a good chance that's not going to happen for 6 months.
Yeah. And so going back to your first point, I would love to go one by one and hit those topics. So the first one is differentiation, and I really want to cover that, because a lot of what I'm kind of talking about with realtors every day is like, well, you know what? What if Sally in my area is also posting the same thing? What if Sally is also talking about the listings going down? Well, guess what? Everyone should. And chances are 99% of your followers are not the same as Sally's. More than that, like 99.9% of your followers, you are following Sally and you know what she's covering. But the key thing is the rest of your sphere, the rest of your database do not know what's going on. Mm-hmm. And they deserve to be educated. They need to get that education piece from you. And I think that's what we've missed a lot of times there. So I think that's a great point there. So then moving on to your database. So that's a great thing you mentioned here. So a lot of realtors come to me and they're like, I have 4,000 emails. I'm like, where did you get that? And they're like, well, I bought it off this guy on Fiverr, Upwork, and he was selling leads in Calgary, and I bought it. I'm like, why? Why did you do that? Like, your database is the people that know you, is the people that you've somehow connected with them in any way or form. They've had this cold intro first, then they became a warm lead, and now they're used to receiving the stuff from you. Now they're in that zone, and oftentimes realtors come to me and they're like, hey, Sam, I ran this ad. Well, no one bought a house from me. And I'm like, well, you ran an ad for $50 on Facebook for 5 days. Like, what are you expecting? Like, okay, so a few leads came. These are cold leads. And how do you kind of take those cold leads, move them to a warm lead? Is that art of building a database? Is that art of using a system to consistently talk to these guys, to consistently do a touch base and give them something? And give them something doesn't mean, hey, there's an open house that I'm hosting. Giving something means telling them what's going on in the market. Like, we are in the education business, right? So, and I think a lot of realtors miss that. They keep sending listings. Like, who cares? Who cares about that listing that's 2 hours away from me or out of my price range? So you can keep that listing somewhere, but the idea is to educate your audience, educate your database, right? So
absolutely.
So what?
I tend to think of database, I guess, just slightly different probably than other agents. And the 4,000 names, to me, I segment my database in such a way that I have leads, and then I want to move all of those leads into SOI. And so SOI, we think typically as like one element of our business, when in fact, all of these leads that are coming in, yes, we have their email address, but they're not yet ready to buy and sell with us. So my goal is then to get them from this lead stage into my SOI. And so that I am going to be that go-to agent. And so before they're in that SOI, I don't really even consider them a lead in many ways. I call them a lead, but they're not actually part of like my true database. And trying to get them over there, that's where the art form really comes in. And you hit the nail on the head that we're in the education business. I mean, right now, like the infotainment sort of side of things is so huge, is how can we provide information while still being entertaining for folks? And being able to get those people from leads into our SOI, that's where the magic really happens.
Can you color what SOI means one more time? I think
sphere of
Marjorie
influence
is asking.
Yeah, for sure. Sphere of influence. So a lot of times people call their sphere of influence people that, know, like, and trust you. And so my goal is when I get that lead. So if I ran an ad on Facebook for $50 and I got 2 leads, but none of them bought a house, of course they didn't buy a house. They don't know me, like me, trust me yet. But over the course of time, I'm going to demonstrate an extreme amount of value. I'm also going to be one-to-one communication with them. Yes, I have email drips. For sure, I have email drips in order to try and get them to respond. But my goal is to try and get a response. And as soon as I get a response, then it's one-to-one. It's all one-to-one communication from there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And Ryan B is asking, what is the best, or what are the CRMs that you recommend? And I know there's a million of them. I think the best CRM is something that you use, but you can go ahead and explain more.
Yeah. I tend to be pretty CRM agnostic in many ways for that exact reason. I've tried them all. I've literally, I think, gone through every single CRM. My current CRM that I'm using right now is Follow Up Boss, and I think Follow Up Boss just
great tool.
It's a great tool. The other thing that I look for a few things when it comes to a CRM. First off is ease of use. And so if it's extremely challenging for me to use, then I will dump it right away. Next is I also want it to have some sort of capturing tool so that when I'm capturing that lead, I can then begin to nurture them. And the other thing that I look for, interestingly enough, is this company innovative? Are they innovating? Are they releasing new products? Are they changing? Are they improving? And if they're stagnant, I have been with CRMs that are stagnant and there's no changing and updating with the times, I'll drop that CRM right away. So I've had a lot of success with Follow Up Boss, but largely I would say CRM agnostic.
All right. Okay. So I think the key thing is, guys, remember that if you don't have a system to follow up, you are the system. And that's a terrible thing. So do not leave it to yourself. We as humans tend to forget things. We are lazy in nature, lazy as in I'm tired. I'm following up with this other client. There's no time to follow up with this person. And the moment you put in a system, it just works magic. It's not perfect and it's not that personalized, but you're sending a message out there. You're doing something consistently, and I think that's the key that a lot of people miss out. Just sending something consistently. Like even if you're sending listings to someone, just make sure there is a personal touch to it and just keep sending. Like you'll be surprised by the results. Like you'll be surprised that this guy gets this listing and they're like, hey, I got this from you, and that's awesome. Another thing that I keep saying is, like, sometimes I'm busy while running Roomvu, and I have my real estate team page and everything, and I show up in there and I'm like, oh, there's 100 likes on my Instagram post. I'm like, what did I post? What did I do? And that's okay. People comment on it. People reply to my stories, and I'm like, okay, well, let me read what I said first, and hopefully it's a good thing. But in most cases, so far I haven't had that problem. But I think the beauty of that system, and any system that you use, is that you were posting stuff. You were doing something while you were busy closing deals, while you were busy building that relationships and building that network with your audience. I think that's something that everyone should have, and that system is super important.
To expand on that, now, of course, your team is doing such an amazing job with Roomvu because you're basically taking that pressure of posting every single day. That's hard. Like posting every single day is hard, and I totally agree with that sentiment. So you guys are taking a ton of the work away from us, which is fantastic. The other thing that I've done personally that I've gotten a lot of value from is hire a social media VA. And so this social media VA also helps just run my social media from our company standpoint, because I'm just not able to keep up with it. Yes, I'll go through and I'll approve everything. So having that support, whether it be a virtual assistant to do this, whether it be Roomvu, whether it be a combination of both, I think that is really the unlock here, because we are going to go through times where we're not going to know what to post or how to post.
Yeah, I think that's great. And Anne is asking in this day and age, why would you use a system that doesn't have video? And that's correct. So if you're using a CRM, if you're using any tool, use that videos. Like we do have a mini CRM. We don't want to call it a CRM. We do have a mini follow-up system that sends videos to people. And we've seen a lot of people asking subsequent questions. If you want to go one step beyond that, make a personal video asking questions or answering questions. So I have a buddy of mine, he's actually creating the most frequently asked questions in a personal video, and he sends it to people. And the moment his leads come in, he's sending it and saying, hey, welcome to your first step of buying a home. This is what you should do. And you kind of go from there, right? So I think creating that content, adding a personal touch and sending it out, having a system to publish it is the key that a lot of people miss there. So moving on to the next question. How important for a realtor is to work on a business plan? Well, what is a business plan?
Yeah. I think a lot of times in real estate, we go wrong when it comes to the business plan. And I've done that for years and years. I think the business plan itself needs to be looked at in a couple of different ways. And so we need to differentiate between our goals. Like what is our actual goal? Like what are we actually trying to reach towards? And then we need to reverse engineer that. And that's where I find that most agents go wrong. They'll set a business plan and this is what my goal is. They can get to that part of it. They could even kind of piecemeal together a general plan for that. But we need to reverse engineer that down to a daily action. And so what I tend to do with my business plan is I will look at what my goal is for the year. I will reverse engineer that down to a quarter and then to a month and then to a week. And I just tend to focus, I don't tend to reverse engineer it down to a day, but I will reverse engineer it down to a week. And a lot of that is just built around, again, systematizing my business. And if we're going to do a business plan as a goal is just like the goal itself is like a guiding light, right? But the system that we're going to use to get there, that's like the oars in the water. And this comes from James Clear. If anyone's ever read Atomic Habits, just a fantastic book.
I love that book.
Yeah, it's a game-changing book. But the concept is just so easy for me to sink my teeth into. And it's that the goal is like going to show us this is where we want to go, but then we need the system in there in order to put the oars in the water and move us forward. And I think that's where things are going wrong when it comes to our business plan. I it's quite funny. When I first started to do business plans, I was just pulling numbers out of the sky, to be honest. And I had no real understanding of where my business was coming from the previous year. And so I was just kind of throwing numbers down. And it's no wonder I didn't actually hit those numbers or even close. And I would look at it, and I'm sure others have been in this position too. I would look at it, for January, and then I would kind of dust it off in December and realize that I went in a completely different direction.
I think that's a great point. So we are reaching an end of this short yet powerful success series episode. If there are more questions, guys, please hit us in the comments. I'm going to ask Mike for his last kind of testament. Like, what is it that you want people to remember out of this call and out of this episode? Like, what is the one thing that you would tell them to do? And I think before we started, we talked about spending on marketing when there is a downturn in the market, when the market is kind of slowing down a little bit. I would love to cover that a little bit. And then, any other thoughts that you have?
Yeah, absolutely. Spending on marketing, it's so hard to do, especially in an environment right now where we're very concerned about what does next year hold for us? What does the next 6 months hold for us? But I think we need to take a step back as real estate agents, and we need to start thinking of our business like a true business. And so if I have a business and I want to gain more people into that business, if I want to get more contacts, I will have to spend. But here's the big caveat to the spending is I think we need to be more analytical, and we need to be more data driven. So if I'm going to spend $20,000 on some sort of marketing campaign, what's the ROI that I'm anticipating? And what is the lifetime value of that customer What is the cost of acquisition for that customer, and understanding that equation? But we have to start thinking of our business like a true business, and true businesses will not get anywhere without spending on your marketing. But we also need to be very data centric. It's okay to run a test, and it's okay for that test to fail. And that's a learning opportunity for us. And oftentimes we don't want to spend because we don't want to spend the money and not end up getting anywhere. But that, to me, like I've spent on a ton of different things and it hasn't gone anywhere, but that's a test. And I treat all my marketing campaigns as tests. And then as soon as I get the results of those tests, I will either double down on them or I'll scrap them.
I think that's a great point. And I always say this, like in 2017, the Vancouver market, it got dried up. 2016, 2017, there were like a lot of changes to the market, and I used to spend a lot on my marketing, and I cut that, and it was a terrible mistake because in 2018 my pipeline was dry, and I was like, oh damn, like so in that year that I had to build the contacts, build my network for the years to come. And the subsequent 2-3 years when the market was starting to heat up a little bit, my pipeline was dry. And I think this is a classic mistake that realtors do. As we head for this more balanced market, a lot of realtors will be quitting the business, and that's okay. A lot of the newcomers that thought there's going to be easy money in this, and they're going to get rich in one night of just getting the license, and they're just going to have these deals coming, they will come and go. But if you're staying in the business, you should keep thinking of your next 1 or 2 year flow of deals. Mm-hmm. And it always amazes me, like the person that says no to you today, they will buy a house from you in the next year if you keep sending it right message. They might even use a different realtor now, but they will come back to you. You're always on top of their mind for the next transaction. And I think that's like, not burning that bridge is the key. Being able to always send a consistent message and being able to keep it professional, I think is what a lot of realtors miss. Mm-hmm. And I think it's over. They're not going to do business with them. No, they will. It's just they haven't trusted you yet, but they will trust you in 2 years. They would see you as that market leader in 2 years, and they will come to you to close that. So that's an awesome, I think, ending to this episode. I think. We have this question. We have a couple of questions. So again, questions about what we do. So we post 5 to 7 times on your behalf. We scour the web. We make sure we find the right material. We brand it to you, and we post it across social media. This could be your LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and so on. You can use the same content to run ads. We manage all your ad campaigns for you. And we use the same content to start converting your database. So email marketing, frequent weekly newsletters out of fresh content. And we always send newsletters to your leads, video, email messages, and so on. So all we do is content, and we help you use that content in various ways. We have 2 more questions, and that is, what is your opinion of passive marketing, postcards, and so on? In today's market. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely love postcards. And this comes down to the specialization. Like real estate is hyper local, and we want to serve everybody, and that's okay to want to serve everybody, but we need to be local. And one of the best way, like this is a huge advantage. I mean, being able to be very local and hyper local and geo farming, we're huge advocates of geo farming and using postcards, but ensuring that you're not just sending out one postcard. That's going to be useless and a waste of money. But if we are actually doing this by way of a geo farming plan, your business will explode. And one thing that I tend to ask agents when we're talking about something like this is picture the top agents in your market and ask yourself, do they have a farm? Like, do they have a geo farm? Is there an area that they specialize in? Almost every top producer will have an area that they are specializing in. And so we don't want to be afraid of this. The pie just gets bigger when we specialize in an area. And I send out 2 postcards a month right now. And then I send out a quarterly report to my farm.
That's awesome. And I think like you touched on something that I learned the first day in the business. So I was doing this 10,000 people campaign or 10,000 household campaign for my postcards. And my managing broker was like, okay, so this is like going to cost you like $3,000. Are you sure you're going to do this? And you're going to keep doing this? And I was like, what do you mean by keep doing this? It was like, well, instead of doing 10,000, just do 1,000, but keep sending 10 campaigns. That's way more impactful, and that's way more effective. And I think that's something that really stayed with me. And I think everyone should just remember that you don't spray and pray. You run a campaign. It's a pipeline, and you gotta do this consistently. Pick a neighborhood, stick with it for a year. Even if you're doing social media videos, do not post one video and think you're gonna be rich from that video. It's not working like that. You have to spend that effort and sustain that effort over a long period of time to get that result and get that thing that you want out of it. All right. So e-postcards or physical cards. That's another question that we have here.
Physical. Yeah, I'm huge for physical because they're landing at the door. Yes, some people are going to throw them away, but I'm going to tell you, like, I'm going to be in front of you basically every 2 weeks. And this also comes back to the test. So anytime I'm trying, there's a few things when it comes to a farm. First off, I'm going to test it for a year. So I'm willing to give up 1 full year's worth of marketing expenses in order to test that farm. And a lot of times we just test it for 2 months. The other thing is be strategic about the farm that you actually select and understand that there needs to be a certain amount of turnover. We don't want to choose a farm that's already heavily farmed. And we also want to choose a farm that we like and that we're able to actually show face in and we're actually able to be there in person. Because if we just do postcards, it's not going to be as effective as truly geo-farming a community. And your business will explode. In 2 years' time, if you stay consistent geo-farming for 2 years' time, your business will explode. It's just, you have
I always
to
say that, like,
out.
you do offline, then you build connections with people. They would start asking you questions. They would want a CMA from you. And then you build that online database in the same area. And then you can keep sending them consistent things. So you can send them neighborhood videos. You can send them things about that, like things that you create or others create, like ours. But the idea is to keep that audience and move it away from offline to email, then hopefully text messages, and then building the connection and being able to be there when they have a friend asking for a realtor, when they have their cousin that's moving into the city, or even working with you on their own home sale or home purchase. So thank you so much, guys, for joining this call. Thank you so much, Mike, for every useful insight that you've given. I think this is really, really cool. I've learned a lot, and I hope our audience has learned a lot as well. So thank you so much, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks for having me.